Welcome back everyone. As most of you know, iPhones are one of my favorite, consumer devices that have ever been released. And everyone has an iPhone, it seems like nowadays. But the crazy thing is every single time Apple releases an iPhone, I'm pretty much in love with it. I always try to find issues with it, at first, but towards the end of its life cycle, towards the end of that year, I just fall in love with it and I love it so much. But there was an iPhone that I never really liked all across the board. There were some times where I was a fan of it here and there, but for the most part, I just never really, found myself liking it, unlike maybe some other iPhones that even came out the same time that this one did. And this specific iPhone is the iPhone XS Max. Now, surprisingly, I think this iPhone's still a pretty decent phone. I think it has, a lot of capability and everything like that. But I just never really found this phone to be that flagship of that time. And to be honest, the iPhone XS kind of falls in the same category too. But the XS, it wasn't supposed to be that flagship. The XS Max is supposed to be the best of the best. And I'm glad Apple went ahead and actually increased the size and they went ahead and gave us a bigger sized iPhone, which was awesome at that time. But the problem was that they really limited a lot of capability that the iPhone XS Max could have had, and I think because of that, that's why the 11 Pro Max was such a solid phone. Now with something like the XS Max, first of all, the body of it was great. I liked it a lot, and I think the screen was beautiful, had a high resolution display, OLED panel which looked beautiful. The performance was pretty much exactly the same as the iPhone XS, which I never really liked. I liked having something like, the iPhone 12 and the iPhone 12 Pro series, where there is a pretty big difference in that, performance gap. With the iPhone XR, with the iPhone XS and the iPhone XS Max and even the XR, there really wasn't any big difference. You had an extra gig of RAM, but other than that, it was pretty much the same. At least now we're getting more power with the iPhone 13 series. But on top of that, the battery life and the battery size was one of the most disappointing things from the iPhone XS Max. And this was one reason why I just wasn't such a huge fan of it. At that time, the iPhone XR, the cheapest model of that time, had the best battery life in my opinion from either the XS or the iPhone XS Max. And that was something that really kind of threw me off because the iPhone XR was so much cheaper, but the iPhone XS Max was so much more expensive. So you would imagine that one being the more expensive, better one in every category, but that wasn't the case. The iPhone XR had the better battery life of that year, in my opinion, and that kind of threw things off too. So when you have a phone that's as powerful as the XS Max at that time, that had the latest and greatest version of iOS, that had a smaller battery that you would expect, it was barely over 3,000 milliamp hours, and it was only slightly bigger than the iPhone XRs. It just didn't really make too much sense. Apple went ahead with the 11 Pro Max and really switched things up and gave us almost a 4,000 milliamp hour battery on that phone. But for some reason, Apple, did something weird with the XS Max. They did eventually release a battery case, which I'll be curious if they release a battery case for the iPhone 13 Pros. But at that time, I wasn't a fan of it. And even now, I'm just kind of indifferent about it. I never really fell in love with this iPhone. Like, I fell in love with the iPhone XR, even with the XS to a certain extent. But the XS Max, I just wasn't a huge fan of it overall. So I don't think it's a bad phone. I still review it, I still talk about it, but I think now it's kind of grown on me a little bit, but the battery size is the one thing that I just cannot get over with this specific phone. So in terms of that covers it up here. If you guys have any other questions or anything like that, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.